Welcome everyone to another episode. It's your host Anna-Lena, and I'm very excited to dive into practical success tip number 4 today as part of this 5-day mini series for introvert and highly empathic leaders like you. So again, let's do a little recap because I know it's so easy to forget what we have covered so far. We started with the importance of protecting your own energy, really grounding yourself in your own values, and with that, minimizing distractions and too much stimulation all around you as much as you can. Then on day 2, we covered the importance of consistency, which is something I think we sometimes kind of want to fight with. And I also want to emphasize this is for all of the human design types. What really matters is that you find a way that works for you to show up consistently. And I think today will also help you a lot with that to get a little bit more clarity on. So if you're a projector, a manifester, or a generator, or any of the human design types, that you can tune into a way that helps you to show up more consistently. And then yesterday we talked about the power of your story and really being authentic and how you can really weave this into everything that you do. So today, number 4, what is it? It's also kind of a combination of two because they're so tied together. It's slowing down and the importance of less is more. You probably know me by now that I love the concept of slowing down and the magic pause. And I mean, the Gene Keys is all about pausing and contemplation. And all of the work that I do is so much about this concept because I have found it so powerful for myself that when I allowed myself to take a step back, especially in those moments when I felt all this pressure and I have to do all these things and everybody's telling me I need to do and take action and be consistent, right? Well, it's still really important to take a step back and to align in what way do I want to do that? And this is literally something that on a very consistent basis, you always want to allow yourself to slow down, especially like I just said, when you feel pressure to take action. This is something I have learned from the Root Center in Human Design, that anytime we take action from pressure, it just doesn't work out well. In my case, anytime I do that, one, I feel a lot of tension in my body. I start to feel stressed. And then I try to create and do, and all the things that are on my to-do list or on my head spinning around. And then I often create mistakes, or I work for a really long time and feel like I did all this stuff, but I kind of realize I didn't do anything because it's also very often very unfocused because again, it comes from pressure. And when instead I allow myself to slow down and literally get out in nature, go dance, do a couple of yoga stretches, go swim, have a cup of tea out by a lake, something, meet a friend, totally get your mind off. Something that especially relaxes you, that helps a lot. I also like sometimes to just go for a run. Because what tends to happen is that all of a sudden I realized that all the things that I thought I had to do and I felt so much pressure with, most of them are very irrelevant. And also kind of they took me away from doing the thing that actually mattered the most. So in a way, the slowing down always brings me back to clarity and shifting myself into the right direction where I want to share my story, where I want to show up more consistently, or again, bring back awareness where, hey, I let my energy into way too many different directions again, and I have way too many distractions all around me. What do I need to let go of? Right? Without consistently tuning in, taking a pause, slowing down, we get so caught up in this constant hustle and chasing oftentimes ways of running our business that may have worked for somebody else, but really doesn't work for you. And with that, I also want to mention that less is more. This is literally something I remember years ago. I had like a little blackboard and I think this was before I even started my coaching journey. I wrote on there like less is more. So this has been something I knew always. I didn't always fully understand it, but when it comes to especially the concept we talked about consistency, we can take it to the extreme, obviously, right? We can think like, I have to post like every single day and I have to get all the likes and I have to get all the comments. I have to go viral. But when you're chasing that, let me tell you, we are after the wrong thing, because that's usually to get some instant gratification, to kind of get the adrenaline rush, because it kind of feels good, right? When we see like all these likes pop up or our social media following goes up through the roof and stuff like that. And that always comes from the wrong intention, because then we are most often disconnected from being truly of service and being truly authentic. Like I said, it's more about the instant gratification in the moment. And also, let's think about this. If we are just mindlessly, for the sake of likes and comments, get more content out there, because I have seen this a lot. Like you can buy things like, oh, here 100 templates, or here this new AI tool so you can create 50 posts in one day. Like this over amount of stuff that we are then putting out into the world that often comes from a non-authentic place, or it has like very little value, right? So that's why I also am really much a supporter of less is more, and especially in the context of what you do share on a consistent basis. So if this is your email newsletter, if this is what you post on social media or what you post out on your podcast and things like that. And for me, for example, if I were to, because I feel like I have to have a 1 hour episode every single day on my podcast, one, that would stress me out. And this was also probably way beyond the capacity of my listeners, right? I mean, this week I am trying out something new, and it's smaller episodes over 5 days. I don't know, maybe I'm going to like it. I'm going to continue doing that. Maybe that has more value than sharing one long episode. But anyways, this is just me experimenting with that, right? My whole point here is, don't just put content out there because you feel pressure and because you feel like you have to meet the requirements of the algorithm, right? Because that's kind of, I think, a very desperate chase, and again, kind of comes from the wrong intention, where we really lose sight of what are our values, what do we stand for, and rather focusing of high value, authentic content. And so I rather post once a week or a few times a week, but something that I know is really powerful, rather than every single day because I have to. And it's kind of just some cookie cutter stuff that doesn't feel really authentic. And the other thing with this less is more is also in terms of the concepts you talk about, because sometimes I know also, because I have this other course, Easy Podcast Launch, where I help people launch their own podcast. And we talk a lot about, okay, what do I talk on my podcast about? And often people have this fear of like, well, I'm going to run out of ideas, because we feel like we always need to talk about something new all the time. And don't underestimate the power of repetition. And I'm going to say this again, don't underestimate the power of repetition. You don't have to always come up with new things all the time. I rather see you, or even myself, talk about something that I really stand for, that I really believe in. And I keep sharing the same message over and over again. And you can obviously do it in different ways, but consistency, I have talked about this many, many times. I talk about it with my private clients. I talk about it in my group programs. I have talked about it on my podcast. Now in this 5-day mini series, I mention it in my membership everywhere. It's part of everything, and that's very valuable, because you and I mean, we are humans. We need to hear things sometimes over and over again, and sometimes also from different people. That's also why when you feel like, oh, somebody else already talked about this, I can't. Of course we can talk about it. Nobody owns the word consistency or something like this. You can also reference when you heard something from somebody, let's say you already talk about consistency, you hear somebody else talk about consistency, and then reflect on it and share your take on it. Or say, hey, I just read this and this is what you can, take away now from my analysis of this topic and stuff like that. So that's also something I think that will help you a lot with being more consistent, that you give yourself permission to share things again. And especially when you do it in the moment, it will always be unique and it will always be a little bit different. So on my social media, for example, some of the human design teachings that I share there with all these gates and the channels and the types, I repeat this over time because people forget and how much stuff is on social media. And this is for me such profound, deep wisdom. I better share this several times there because it has such huge value from my understanding, such huge transformational value that I almost it's my obligation to keep sharing those things. And like I said, people need to hear and see things many, many times for them, and sometimes even to pay attention to it, and then eventually to really integrate it into their own life with that. So this was today. Again, it was about both slowing down and how less is more. And I think it all ties in with the topics we talked from the previous 3 days, because also that's protecting your energy, right? The slowing down and less is more both kind of complements this. So I hope you can kind of see how this all ties together. And my invitation for you is to reflect, when are you taking action from pressure? How does this feel? And what's the output for you? When you kind of feel like you have to get all this stuff out there, or you're forcing yourself to be consistent and stuff. And what actually rises for you when you slow down? And also, what are some things that are so important for what you stand for that you can share, you know, over and over again, and also less frequent, where you feel like you don't have to just fill everything in just to be busy out there and just to feed the algorithm, right? So it's really about high value, unique, curated content that you keep sharing consistently, but again, at a pace that doesn't burn you out, a pace that doesn't put you in this high pressure cooker kind of situation where you just don't enjoy it anymore. Because just like nature, we humans, we have phases where we're more productive. We have phases where we want to really rest and withdraw. And another like side tip here is that when you have these high amplified energy phases where you are like on fire and you want to create stuff, then create a little bit in a batch, and then you can release it over time. You don't have to like release it for the next, like 3 hours, all the ideas you had, but you're like, okay, this is actually content I can share over the next 2 weeks. And then during those 2 weeks, you may feel a little bit uninspired for some time. And then, hey, you already have something that you came up with a week ago. And here you go. That helps you then also stay consistent. And luckily these days we have all these beautiful technology tools where you can schedule your social media posts. Like even you can go on a vacation and it's already out there and scheduled. So that is that. I hope you found this really helpful. And again, it has been such a game changer for me. And I hope this, like I said, will be very helpful for you as well. And thank you again for your time and your attention. And I would love to hear your biggest takeaways if you would love to share. If you're watching this here on YouTube, or if you're listening to on the podcast, feel free to send me a message on Instagram or send me an email. I always love to hear from you guys. And I'm excited to be with you all for day 5 tomorrow. See you then.